In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a fashion editorial for Harper's Bazaar, Mexico. The theme is floral terrarium. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. And what's awesome about fashion editorials is you start with an idea, a concept, a fantasy, something that doesn't exist, and then you bring it to life. And it can be something as simple as the way you do hair and makeup on a model, or it could be something as complex as a really dramatic set build. And that's what you'll see in this fashion editorial. I was commissioned by Harper's Bazaar, Mexico, to shoot for their nature-themed upcoming issue. Now, for the theme of nature, so many different directions I could take it. But of course, being winter in New York City, there wasn't a chance of shooting nature on location. And so in my concept, I decided I wanted to create a terrarium for my subject. My fashion model was going to be in some sort of glass cage, some glass containment. And then around her, and then in that container would be flowers and greenery and lush. Now I could create this in a studio, but I thought that that might be a little bit sterile. In fact, it would be much more interesting to be on location, but then again, on location runs into the cold weather problem. And so what I did is I reached out to the Foundry. They're a beautiful wedding and event venue in Long Island City. It's one of the most beautiful places in New York. And I reached out and I was able to have an opportunity to shoot in one of their greenhouse rooms. It is so beautiful. It's exactly what I wanted because it was going to allow me to fuse a little bit of the outdoors with the indoors. That's already what the room is looking like. The walls are covered in ivy. There's green plants and elements growing all over, but then it also has more of a warehouse industrial structure. And then within that, I would have my terrarium. So the first challenge, of course, is to figure out, okay, well, how do you bring a terrarium to life? And so I got a couple quotes around New York City for building this terrarium, and they were insane because it's New York and they charge you whatever they want. So I spoke with one of my friends who's actually filming here, and he said that he could help me make it out of plexiglass. So we built this little room out of 4 pieces of plexiglass. And by we, I mean him. But I was able to get that base. And then I collaborated with the most wonderful florist. She is an event and floral and set designer, Ivie Joy flowers. And so once the terrarium was built, it was the job of her and her team to build flowers around it and within it and over top of it. And so you can see what the set ended up looking like. It is exactly what my vision was. If you look at the mood boards, you can see the direction that this was going, and we were able to bring it to life. And so, as you can imagine, the most important part of this is taking the concept and building the set. And then, next element would be the model and the styling, and then the lighting, and then the post-processing. But all of the things have to come together to make it successful. So let's actually look at the behind the scenes to see a little bit of the lighting that was going on. All right, well, first and foremost, one of the things that was important were my camera settings. I was balancing the ambient light coming in the room, so there was light from overhead, with my studio strobes. I wanted to see some of the ambient light and then add kisses of strobes into the scene. One of the problems we ran into originally was actually the sun was going over the greenhouse and so the roof there. And so I was getting sunlight that was dappling, which was beautiful, but inconsistent, and it was changing as we were shooting. So those are the things I was trying to balance. So the camera settings, I was using a Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-105, and I was shooting at 1/100th of a second, f4 ISO 500. Now the reason I was shooting at these settings is if you look, that's actually letting in quite a lot of light. Those were the camera settings necessary to allow the ideal amount of ambient light in. Even though it was, there was some sun that day, it was never really a bright and sunny day. And so I needed to actually open up and allow a lot of light in to get the room exposed correctly. And then I added the strobes into the scene and adjusted those so that they would complement the ambient light, but not overpower it. So those are the camera settings, but let's take a look at the scene. All right, so first and foremost, we have the umbrella on the left-hand side. This was meant to be a top-down light to give a little directionality to a soft light source that would kind of kiss from above. Then I have, to the right-hand side here, a Profoto D2 with a 5-degree grid. Basically, we kept this pointed at the subject's face, so there'd just be a little lift, a little pop of light, a little more contrast on her face no matter where she posed, and I kept an assistant on that at all times. Then you can see there's a couple other lights. There's one in the background on the left with a 20-degree grid. I just used this to add a kiss of light across the background. At times, the background got a little dark, so we used a grid to enhance that. And there was another 20-degree grid to the right-hand side of the frame Same exact thing, just to create little pockets or slices of light across the background. And then there was one more strobe back here used to light the floor. It wasn't specifically for the floor, however, it was more of a background light, or light coming from the background like a rim light. You can see that there was a little bit of haze in the room. Because of the plants and because of the space, I wasn't allowed to use a haze machine. So at times we'd use a little bit of a haze in a can and just be able to create a little bit of mist or fog in the space, which is what you can see in this shot. So basically I have my ambient light coming in from overhead, kind of kissing the scene. I wanted to make sure that looked good. Then I had an overhead soft light source and then little pockets of light under the background and then one little hard light on the face. So it's really ambient, overhead soft light, light on the face, other lights for separation on the background or detail. Now, let's take a look at the shots. So you can see here's a shot where I was incorporating a lot of the environment of the background and trying to set the scene a little bit, but I wanted to show you kind of a before and after of a shot. So in this particular image, you can see I'm shooting at a higher angle. I was trying to use the same box, but shoot from different angles, different perspectives, high up on a ladder, really low down from a corner to make the editorial be cohesive, but also not get boring. I didn't want it to get too repetitive. So I was trying to move a lot to create variety. This is where the image started. So this is what the light looked like. You can see there's a little bit more contrast on her face. There's a top-down light. There's little pockets of light on the background, all of these things I said. But what I did is I increased the contrast and I added a heavy vignette. I really wanted to focus the light on her. And then you can see we popped a little bit more contrast on her face and then cleaned up some of the reflections in this scene. So the original shot was pretty flat, and then I added a lot of contrast and a lot of drama with my color grade and my retouch. But as you look through some of these other shots from the editorial, you can see that throughout the day I created variety with my camera angle, but also at times I would have light flaring in, or I would use CTOs, or I'd use more of the environment, include some of the ceiling, or I'd get in close for tighter shots. And so it wasn't that I stuck with the same lighting all day, but I tried to keep with the same concept. Light kissing from overhead and then a spotlight on the face. At times I'd allow more light of the environment to come in. At other times, I'd make it more dramatic. So this is how I was able to create both diversity in images, but also cohesion as a story. Now, if you were wowed by these shots and the set, I periodically do fashion intensive workshops with a theme of flowers. They're my floral intensives. I also do fashion editorial themes. I do burlesque, fine art, nude, and so much more. So I recommend that you visit learnwithlindsay.com and go to the events or workshops section. You can see what I have coming up over the next year. And the workshops, they sell out quickly because I do this sort of production value, and I try to create images that are truly once-in-a-lifetime photographic experiences. Now, if you'd like to see the gear that I used in the making of this editorial, be sure to check out the links in the description below and visit adorama.com. And of course, if you've enjoyed this photo deconstruction and you want to see more breakdowns of my shoots and behind the scenes, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I have so many more videos just like this one coming your way. See you next time, guys.